All right, I think everybody's back from their breakout rooms. We will continue in the main session now. The main session now is going to talk about alternative dispute resolution tools and which ones are efficient, which ones are not, which ones you should choose over others. And today I'm speaking, my name is Marina, together with my colleague Maria from TPA. So I'll go ahead and start. Next slide, please. So tax policy heat map, maybe just a step back here. Why did we create? This is a creation that me, Luan, Steve, and Renee from IBFD have created in an article that did not get published. So the tax policy heat map tries to map all the policies currently done by international organizations and also different jurisdictions. It's interesting here to see that there are many policies going all around the globe, and there's just a diversity in tax policy. And sometimes these tax policies are actually talking about the same profit, or trying to tax the same profit from different angles or from different policies choices. So in order to get a feeling for how uncoordinated legislators are, we have developed this matrix to address the position of tax legislatures and whether that could lead a war on tax, for example. Alternatively, you could actually create a new equilibrium between these organizations and tax authorities. So that's what we call a second generation of consensus, and that's a tool that we created in this article, and I'm not going to address it here, but that's just basically to show how tax policies worldwide are mainly coming from different places. And we have a visualization here that either tax policies will favor the source country or the country of destiny, and they will either favor application of economic or legal principles in allocating the taxing rights on profits to countries. So in this visual, you see, for example, BEPS. BEPS is considered a country initiative that is based on economic principles and is favoring the country of destination, while the EU digital economy proposal, it's a legal principle and is favoring the country of destination. And you have CCTB there kind of in the middle, because CCTB you can actually separate in two parts. So the asset and employment part and the sales part formula, they will have different approaches inside the same proposal. So one example is, for example, the EU digital service tax that is establishing rules related to corporate taxation of significant digital presences. So this directive is based on legal principles and is favoring the country of destiny. Why we're talking about legal principles? These principles there are not economically driven, but rather chosen from a legalistic legislator perspective. But on the other hand, the BEPS initiative, it focused mainly on economic relevant characteristics of the transactions. So whatever was economically relevant was taken into account. And even Action 8 and 10 reinforced the importance of looking beyond formal contracts when doing a comparability analysis for transfer pricing. The CCTB proposal, preliminary stage was to harmonize the EU corporate tax rules, you might be aware, and do a 3-layer formulary apportionment model to replace domestic rules on transfer pricing specifically. And this proposal does not favor either country of destiny or origin, but rather tries to apportion income based on a set of legal and formula-based principles. So that's why you get that right in the middle in the visual that you see now on the screen. So you get, you can call it like a toxic mix of BEPS combined with individual countries' political reality illustrated by these examples in this matrix, creating a high risk for taxpayers of having double, triple, or even quadruple taxations being left on the same profit, leading to a complete chaos. I mean, maybe this is coming from a very negative perspective, but if you think about it, if you put all these policies into one place, and if you analyze under the tax policy audits, also countries don't seem to have the same approach, and governments protect their own initiatives with the arguments that the corporates like to invest in their country because of a presence of customers or peoples or assets. So this to set the scene around, okay, and how do we translate this into ADR? So how alternative dispute resolutions can come into place to try to mitigate the possible risks of this tax policy, this war on tax that we are seeing in this current slide. So I'll pass the word to my colleague Maria, and she will explain a bit more on the next slide.
So in the slide, you see the two cycles that you probably both all aware of. And the first one is a typical cycle that we all followed before BEPS, which is we were first designing a tax, a transfer pricing structure, we were implementing it, and we were putting some documentation in place, and we were waiting for an audit. And then when the audit comes, we were just defending the structure and either getting maybe punished or maybe just going with it. But what changed after BEPS, partly because there are almost real-time audits, partly because you need to start collecting the audit trail right away. You first need to think before doing anything is how you're going to defend whatever you want to do. So you first think of defense, then you design with this defense lines in mind, then you implement it, you still document it, and then when the audit comes, you are already prepared to defend and protect your structure, and maybe you are less prone to fines. And this kind of change, of course, leads to more disputes because, as I mentioned, there are almost real-time checks, and the tax authorities also now more trained to detect any kind of leaks or any kind of inconsistencies. So that is the reason why alternative dispute resolutions also need to be taken into account.
I missed you. Your sound wasn't well for the last couple of sentences.
Sorry?
Can you please repeat yourself? The last sentences, your phone connection was going away a little bit.
Oh, okay. Is it good now?
Yeah, it's good now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So what I was saying is that so when the audit comes, you are already prepared to defend your structures. And of course, when you're thinking of the defense, you also need to within the alternative dispute resolutions because audit sometimes.
Yeah, your sound is falling away.
Marina, are you in a position to take over?
Yeah, sure. So basically, what Maria was saying here, so I explained a bit of tax policies, and she was going on how to manage your controversy cycle after BEPS. And on the cycle B, basically, you take a proactive position. You're more in a defense side of things, and for that, basically, when you're talking about cycle A, that you're designing your controversy cycle, you're trying to do an ex-ante approach, and you implemented that, and you, in the end, can finally defend it instead of taking a reactive position of defend it and then having audit after that. So it's very important that after this whole war on taxes that was explained, and how to create your controversy cycle after these tax policy initiatives are actually all over the place, you need to take an ex-ante approach to it and not just react to whatever comes in your way on another cycle, for example. So maybe on the next slide, we are going to just address more the ADR tools that we have. Can you move to the next slide, please? Mary, did you want to add something? Are you back? Or
Yeah, I'm back now. I think you covered everything. Thank you.
Okay, great. So here we have another visual here. You're just basically seeing the instruments for controversy management. And the red ones are ones that we consider that they're risk. So they are already a trouble zone for corporates. And the green ones are actually steps that you can take to be proactively and have an ex-ante approach to defend your side. So these 4 axes, so you have multilateral versus unilateral and proactive versus reactive. In the reactive sides, you can see, for example, your state aid investigation, tax audits, low quality documentation. So there's all reactive and post-fact tools that you can use for controversy management. While in the right side, you have 2 types, either a unilateral proactive approach, which is, for example, an APA, or creating a RTP doc and having it well documented, or you can have multilaterals. When we're talking about multilaterals, we are talking, for example, like ICAP initiative, mediation, MAP, CBCR as a tool that can also support your controversy, and value chain analysis. So what we're trying to address in this visual, it's which side of the coin you would like to be, either a reactive or proactive side, and either in a multilateral or unilateral way. Multilateral is just for more countries, and unilateral, you're just taking APAs with each tax authorities that you would like to. So one take here is that there's no right answer, and there's not right tools or all approach that will work for all cases, but it's something that you need to consider when you're designing your controversy management, especially considering the current tax policy scenario. And even on Tuesday, we're talking about the tax technology and how tax technology is impacting taxpayers' rights. So again, taxpayers need to be prepared and aware of the tools that they can use in order to create their controversy. Maybe next slide.
Yeah, so as Marina said, there is no right or wrong tool, but there are ways to choose it. And in this slide, we see one of the ways that you can use. This is linking your instrument or your tool to your value chain. And of course, this is a very simplified value chain. What we suggest here is that the more or less routine components like manufacturing and sales, which have stable margins, can be defended through APAs. Of course, this year showed us that any kind of agreements with tax authorities in advance are not that good when you have this kind of unexpected crisis, because then, of course, you cannot maintain margins that are promised to the tax authorities. But as such, in more normal times, that's a good approach if you know that your margins are really stable, that the business doesn't change, and that, yeah, then it's a good way to protect a routine part of your value chain through APAs. Other parts, such as residual, we suggest here that they can be defended through a MAP procedure or even through ICAP. And I think actually ICAP, of course, it's still difficult to access for most of the companies, but I think that should be a leading instrument, or maybe there should be other models which would follow ICAP, and yeah, which would work in a similar way, because it's very straightforward and very holistic approach for the profit allocation. And of course, the most simple parts of your services can be defended through safe harbors. And I think, we discussed also safe harbors on Tuesday, and now more and more countries are introducing them. And on the one hand, some multinationals can think of them as very inflexible. But again, if you know that it's a standard service and nothing's going to change, then it's a good way to define it, and maybe at least to reduce some of the headaches you might have. And yeah, when, of course, your value chain can look completely different from this one, and the slide only provides with a general overview how this can be linked, but you definitely need to think how you, when choosing the controversy instrument, whether this part of the value chain that you are looking to defend is routine or more of a unique nature, if the business model will change or not in the coming years, and also if you see that the market instability actually can lead to a significant change of margins, and you need to choose more flexible instrument rather than a very fixed one as an APA.
Can I ask a question on that last point?
Sure.
Because isn't now the fact that you're actually showing those stable returns the ultimate proof that you actually live your business model for better or for worse? So also when something like COVID hits you, when you're claiming that the risk actually resides in a place different than where the manufacturing or the distribution takes place, you actually live it as well when shit hits the fan. Forgive me my French.
Yes. Well, yes, that's of course an option. But yeah, it's becoming an issue if your total profit, so your residual is negative, because you're already promised to the tax authorities to allocate profits to all those routine parts. So then you need to find ways to change it, because you just can't let every entity in the group be profitable except your principal, if you have more or less principal structure. So yeah, Hans, I could not really hear you.
Maybe it's best to address the question in the chat box, since the audio is not working so well.
Yeah, yes, please. So please, if you have questions on this one, type them in the chat box, and we can come back to them and answer in the course of our presentation. Can we move to next slide, please? Okay, so here we wanted to discuss the other way to choose your instrument. So we created in TPA a decision tree, actually based on the real case. And when deciding which instrument to choose, the first step should be not even thinking of an instrument, but rather you need to create in advance, of course, a storyboard. So maybe a slide deck or a video or anything that you find useful for about your company and about your business. So not just a dry and very technical transfer pricing model, but really more, let's say, understandable and down-to-earth explanation what the company does, what the business is about. And also, if you already have some experience with your company and you know what kind of questions you typically get asked, then create, just like on any website these days, create a frequently asked questions deck, or again, can be a table, anything, where you already have an answer to typical question. So if in one country you've been asked why your distributor earns only 1% margin, you already know the answer because you've been asked in other countries and the answer is the same. So when this tool is already useful, and it's not even a controversy instrument, but a useful tool, and if you can answer the questions from the authorities through this tool, good, then you don't need any other instrument to use, and you can just wait until the audit. However, if the question from the authority is not standard and you don't know the immediate answer, then you need to think of the controversy instrument. So as I was explaining before, you need to look at your value chain to adopt it. And as I said, taking into account if it's routine or non-routine profit and other circumstances. Next step, you need to look at the content. So what is required for the instrument? Typically, countries have standard list of documents which can be requested for the audit, for example, or for the court case, or for any alternative dispute resolution. So it's already known list of things that you will be asked, and you can review it and then see if this list is actually, if it's limited and if it's understandable what you're going to be requested, so you can properly control the information shared with the authority. If the answer to this question is yes, then you can go ahead. But if you see that there is too much information requested or multiple rounds, and it looks, as we call it, fishing expedition, then you probably need to stop with this instrument and wait until the audit. Because, you don't want to provide anything extra if you're feeling that the tax authority actually is not asking for a specific purpose, but rather is trying to first find this purpose. And as a golden standard for such list, we of course refer to ICAP because it's very extensive, yet very clear list of documents and contents that you need to provide, which covers really most of the tax positions, at least in the direct tax, of course. And that's why we refer to it. So once you're fine with the content, you can check also the pros. Again, we refer to ICAP as a golden standard because they have very clearly defined timeline, and you know when the next step comes. So you can also manage this again with your business teams. You can manage with your auditors and make them aware when things going to happen. While if the process is more than a year or maybe more than 2 years, then you probably again need to stop with this instrument because in this time manner, too many things can change, and the tax authority's team even can change. So this instrument might not lead to any kind of outcome, or not even talking about any positive outcome for your company. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, you also need to look at your business model and how stable it is. And if the outcome that you want from this, from the use of this tool, is compatible with it and can be used for the next 3-5 years, then good. And you can even, in this example, go for the APA. But also you can look at the other instruments, as we mentioned before. So the courtroom or the MAP procedure, maybe go to arbitration or mediation. Or if accessible to your company, then even go for ICAP. Steve, would you like to add anything here? Because you participated in many various controversy cases and used various instruments.
Well, this process is fairly complex for people this late in the evening. But what it boils down to is if you have your business case and frequently asked questions around how you run your business or the governance ready, waiting for an audit might be the better option. If the step 1, 2, 3, and 4 does require you to produce a lot of paperwork, which in the current political environment around tax audits is not always going to be honored, and especially if there's a political reality in a country where people are not singing from the songbook, but are basically doing their own interpretation on facts. And I always call that the difference between facts, fiction, and fairy tales. The facts are captured in the storyboard and frequently asked questions and should not lead to other answers, even if the tax inspector questions or interviews your business people. That's, I think, the essence of what we're looking at, and will be your best defense that you want to be taxed on facts only. As we've seen already 2 days ago on our first session, the the relationship with facts starts blurring the minute people start, tax inspectors start looking at, for example, concepts like options realistically available. That almost invites tax inspectors to do motive testing, which is always a very bad sign on the wall, and in terms of that leads to an own interpretation on facts and sometimes to fictions and fairy tales on which you will get taxed, which is obviously not the legal base for being taxed. So the political angle we're looking at here, and just to repeat the obvious, Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 are highly politicalized papers, which hardly do try even to connect back to the economics of a business model. So the more of that type of flavors you get, the harder it is to defend your case, except by going back to your own storyboard and your frequently asked questions. So make sure under this box, step 1, your facts are very clear to whoever you tell it, and tell it in a very consistent manner.
Thank you for input, Steve. Can you go please to the next slide? So we also prepared a couple of questions. Of course, the audience, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat box. So the first one is, which of the instruments are top 3 in today's world of controversy? Of course, I would not like to rank them because, as we discussed just now, it really depends on the situation and lots of circumstances which one to choose. But I think, this in my experience today, the audit, the good old audit, is still leading because it's the most simple and obvious one, and all the parties understand how it works, and it's the most accessible, and the procedures are already predefined, and as such, I think this is really the way for more simple cases. For more complex ones, I think that we would see more map procedures. Do we like it or not? But I think it's going to be the case because we would see more double taxation, and that's the only way to resolve. And actually, I know that today a new version of BEPS Section 14 was published regarding, I think it's also regarding the help in dispute resolution. So for all of us to read, and I hope the map procedure would be improved in the near future, and would the deadlines for payments will be even more shortened. They were already shortened by the new arbitration convention that was signed, but I hope this would be reduced even more to a more reasonable time frame. And last instrument, which I was already talking about, and which we in TPA consider golden standard, is ICAP, because it really takes a short amount of time. Comparing to other instruments, it's really clear content and understandable procedure. And of course, the outcome is then can be used not for just one specific transaction, but rather it covers the whole value chain. So I think it's, in that sense, very useful instrument, and I hope more multinationals would be getting access to it. Steve, would you like to add anything here?
Well, I think a lot of corporates are not fully convinced that governments will give them access to map procedures on the fly, because the map procedures, especially cross-border, are quite time-consuming, and it looks like if governments are confronted with such a request by a corporate, they will first, I think the first assessment they will make, do we like the government of the other country? And if we don't like them, let's find an argument not to give you access to a map procedure. Obviously, I don't want to disqualify the good tax authorities who will take a serious hit at the corporate's interest and start that process. But I feel that in a world where digital data moves at the speed of sound, a map process which is from almost like centuries ago is a too slow mover of a controversy tool to really rely on in today's world. So if your CFO wants you to tell what your tax position is and your final tax position, preferably 3 months after the financial year, it's very hard if you're the head of tax to start talking about a MAP procedure with the timelines involved. So I think it's also the government struggling with, and we have luckily we have today Fiona in our midst of HMRC who will take us through this alternative dispute resolution in one of the breakout rooms. Because the world is really in need of some alternatives and not time and people and money consuming processes like MAP. At least maybe Hans, you have some additional comments, but I believe we're ready for a new tool.
Yeah, I was kicked out and apparently it was my computer. Nevertheless, so I missed a piece. But with respect to the mutual agreement procedure, keep in mind that the dispute resolution directive from the European Union has changed the system in a way. It doesn't change the map, but it gave alternative possibilities to come to a solution without having to exclude the map as such. So I'm not fully sure whether this has been discussed, but there are more possibilities nowadays, at least within the European Union, than just, for example, the map. But I was kicked out, so I tried to get in, but my apologies.
What's your view on the traditional map, Hans? That was a little bit where my point lies. That feels like an old-fashioned tool to resolve something in the digital age.
It's old-fashioned. It depends on with which state you work. A recent one of my clients with Switzerland went perfectly well. But now and then, if the smaller the company, the bigger the chances that you'll be just one of the exchange items of a meeting, and therefore you don't know where you will end. So, because as a company you're not a party with the map, that's strange. But I see more and more happening that specifically in Latin America, but also in the Asian Pacific region, that maps which deal a little bit only with tax avoidance, so not a strong case, that a lot of these states do not tend to want to move, and therefore it's no guaranteed outcome, and therefore it's a difficult thing. That's why we created a solution in the European Union as an alternative, and the ICAP is being intended by OECD to be the global alternative. However, there are a lot of hiccups here, as you know.
And I would like also to add with regards to map procedure. I think we also discussed it in the past, but I think it's important that at least in the country where your headquarters are, or maybe if you have multiple headquarters and multiple countries, is to a bit bring the tax authority to be a partner in crime. Because if they, in a way, well, I can't say like you, but if they appreciate that you're leaving profits in their country, then they should be helpful and should still, in a way, battle for you in this map procedure, because indeed, as Hans said, because the company cannot be present in the procedure, you can only rely on the good relationship with the authority that they would do something in relation to the resolution. If you wanted to add something?
No, I think the breakout sessions are there for a reason, because there's not, at least in this panel, there's not a majority who says uh, uh, who cheers for the classical MAP procedure, so the alternative dispute resolution, as Hans just outlined, as within the MAP formal procedure, you have these alternatives is probably the way to go, because I think the whole reports the OECD has been published do not give enough guarantees to corporates that this whole effort is going to pay off. And what it feels like is a little bit, if you look at ICAP in particular, although that's a good golden standard because you know timing, you know exactly what documents to land where, at least according to the paperwork. The less governments are trusting each other, the more the corporates have to deliver much more information than they really want to. So there's a negative correlation between being paranoia and how much the corporates need to deliver in terms of convincing all of the parties sitting on the other side about the good intent. And I think that's, that's not how the world should be. It's the base version of trust to come back on which these cases are being resolved. And I think the alternative dispute resolutions is exactly what the breakouts are about. And I'm not saying zero documentation is the standard, but as we discussed already 2 days ago when Luis from Brazil was indicating, he says, I'm a lawyer. I don't think transfer pricing should produce 5,000 pages to replace trust between taxpayers and tax authorities. That's the wrong way around. So he especially was making reference to amount B in the pillar 1 discussion, which obviously takes us a per sector benchmarked compensation to sales and marketing. If you add a benchmark of cost plus 5, which most countries will accept on intercompany services, and if you do the same for manufacturing services, the routine part, and the only thing you're left with is 5 ways to slice the residual, and basically as a corporate taxpayers, as Louis and me had a dialogue, you can hand over the residual portion and the 5 methods to slice that residual pie to the 10 countries you have operations in, and ask the tax authorities to take their favorite allocation key, but there can only be one. So the 10 of the countries need to agree on which of the 5 ways they're going to accept as how the residual gets split. Well, then the world of tax looks more like a 5-pager instead of a 5,000-pager, which again is trying to resolve the distrust between governments amongst themselves, and is all taken out on the corporate.
It could work with a little number of states there. That's the main problem. In the EU, for example, it could work this way. But if you have a problem with, let us say, assume the Netherlands and Germany, and there is a map, and the map solved the issue, then you already there have the problem that the regional tax inspector can say, I don't mind about the map, I have my own authority, so I do it my own way. So your idea is correct, but I think we have to conquer we will experience a few wars before we will be there. It's not that easy to achieve.
No, it isn't. I think we're almost time to migrate to the breakout rooms. There's a few minutes left.
Indeed.
Marina, is there any final points you want to raise?
No, I think, I think more points will be discussed in the breakout rooms. So thank you, everybody. And we will be moving, and you can, grab some water in this 2-minute break.
I will move everyone now. Just in case if anyone has been allocated wrongly, please message in the chat box, and one of the TPA representatives will let me know, and I will change you over.